President Trump holds an emergency White House national address to walk back Secretary of State Marco Rubio's statement to the press that it was Israel who was the imminent threat that forced the U.S. to join their attack on Iran.
And was there an imminent threat? Did you tell lawmakers that there was an imminent threat?
There absolutely was an imminent threat, and the imminent threat was that we knew that if Iran was attacked, and we believed they would be attacked, that they would immediately come after us. And we were not going to sit there and absorb a blow before we responded, because the Department of War assessed that if we did that, if we waited for them to hit us first after they were attacked, and by someone else, Israel attacked them, they hit us first, and we waited for them to hit us, we would suffer more casualties and more deaths.
Oh, goody, I get to open my Happy Meal. Mr. President, Prime Minister Netanyahu on your cell phone. Hello, your Zionists. Your Highness. No, little Marco does not need to be fired, at least not just yet. Didn't you see any of my episodes of The Apprentice? I'm not ready to throw him under the bus just yet. Why? Well, because I might have to do that on my next invasion when we invade Cuba. I'm going to let little Marco take most of the blame for that one. What's that? No, like I said, little Marco does not need to be fired for saying that Israel was the imminent threat and that you guys forced us into the war. All right? Listen, I know what I have to do to spin this to the press, so just leave it to me. I'm going to tell them that it was just the fog of war, the fog of war. Little Marco got caught up in all of that hazy fog of the epic fury. He just got confused. And he misread your Hebrew script you gave us. How about next time you give us a script in English? No, I told you I'm not going to fire little Marco, and you better stop threatening me, Bibi. You better stop threatening to release those Epstein secret videos you have, or you know what I'm going to say. You know what I'm going to tell the world? That's right, I'm going to tell everybody the entire Bible is nothing but a made-up lie by you Jews and the Vatican. And what do you think that's going to do to your whole "we are the chosen people, greater Israel" agenda? Dead on arrival, that's right. Especially when after that, I announce to the world that UFOs and aliens are real. And I bring 3 different alien species right here into the Oval Office for a Big Mac McDonald's lunch. Mr. President, we're live to the nation in 30. Okay, thank you. Listen, Bibi, I got to run. I go live in 30. You better chill out with the blackmail threats and let me do what I do best. Yeah, hail Zion, whatever. We now interrupt our regularly scheduled programming and take you live to the White House for a special emergency presidential address. Mr. President, we go live in 5. Thank you. My fellow Americans, there seems to be a little bit of confusion over why I launched Operation Epic Fury. And I just wanted to come on tonight because the fake news has been, screaming and hollering about me not giving any good reasons why. So I wanted to come on tonight and clear up the confusion. Please forgive any interruption of your favorite programming, unless, of course, I'm interrupting Bill Maher. All right? Nothing but a failed comedian with clear Trump derangement syndrome. If you're a Bill Maher fan, you're not missing anything anyway. But I just wanted to come on tonight and speak to the American people and clear up the confusion, because it really is understandable. It may seem like very contradictory reasons that I've given, but it's understandable because of a phenomenon known during battle of something that's called the fog of war. So I just wanted to come on tonight and explain to the American people why each of our official reasons for invading Iran may have seemed contradictory. There's a reason why. It's a common phenomenon that happens during battle. It's called the fog of war. And the fog of war is just unavoidable in such military operations like this. Trust me, believe me, and everyone knows that if you've ever watched the movie Apocalypse Now. A lot of fog in that movie. That I can tell you. Very foggy movie. And look what happened to Marlon Brando's character at the end. Very sad. Very delusional. So just like Brando's delusional character, when little Marco said what he did, that Israel was the imminent threat, and that they told us they were going to attack anyway, and it forced our hand, and I can't believe he said that on camera, but when little Marco did that, that was just him getting caught up in the fog of war and being dazed and confused. And if anything, trust me, believe me, I can tell you that in all of that foggy haze, it was probably me who forced Israel's hand and made them feel like they had to attack along with us. To be honest with you, it was probably me. And since I made that decision, we have decimated Iran's military.
Mr. President, the U.S. consulate in Saudi Arabia was just blown up by an Iranian drone.
That was probably Israel. Trust me, believe me, probably Israel. Anyway, as I was saying, our mighty military has totally decimated Iran's military.
Mr. President, 5 of our critical billion-dollar radar tracking stations in Iraq have just been destroyed.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Caroline. As I was saying, our mighty military has completely annihilated Iran's military. Now they have no choice but to completely surrender all of their oil to us and allow me and my Chevron and Mobil and Exxon donors to select their next supreme leader like I did in Venezuela.
Mr. President, one of our military bases in Kuwait just took 2 direct hits by Iranian missiles with reports of serious casualties.
Okay, Carolyn, can you give it a rest, okay? Can you go, I don't know, make a pot of coffee or something? Thank you. You see what I mean? The fog of war has affected even little Caroline Levitt. It's not just Marco. She's delirious, dazed and confused too. And with that, I will go ahead and take a few of your questions.
Mr. President,
Go ahead, Peter Ducey.
Mr. President, Peter Ducey, Fox News. After your bombing of Iran last year, you have consistently told the world that you utterly destroyed Iran's nuclear facilities. Yet, the initial reason you gave for why you attacked Iran this time was because they were 1 week away from having a nuke. So my 2-part question is, how can both statements be true? And how can it be the fog of war when you made that claim for an entire month before launching this war?
But obviously, that was the fog of pre-war. Anyone with any military background and experience would know that. It doesn't just get foggy during war. Oftentimes it gets even more foggy in the month leading up to war. The fog of pre-war.
Sir, just one follow-up. Isn't it true you managed to get a deferment from going to Vietnam and no one in your family's history has ever served in the military?
Okay. No more questions from fake news Ducey. Who's next?
Mr. President,
Go ahead.
Mary Bruce, ABC News. So after Secretary Rubio said Israel was going to attack Iran before us, you are now saying that you were going to attack Iran before Israel. Can you tell us, is that your final answer, or will you need to use a lifeline and maybe call a friend?
Are you trying to be a comedian or a journalist? Because either way, like Bill Maher, you're an epic failure at both. Who are you with?
ABC News.
Fake news. And, I just have to say, you're a disgusting person, okay? You're a horrible reporter, too. All right? I don't think I've ever seen you smile. I don't think I've ever seen you wear a short skirt and heels. Why don't you wear a miniskirt for me? I'll tell you what, I'll answer your stupid question if you'll do one thing for me. Take your tongue and wipe it around your lips and make them real wet like this. And call me Daddy Donald. But you won't do that, will you? Because you're a horrible excuse for a woman. Next question.
Mr. President,
Go ahead.
Babu, Marrakesh, Politico. Mr. President, just curious, has your official narrative changed in the last 5 minutes since your answer to Fox News' Peter Ducey about why the U.S. attacked Iran?
Wow. That's a great question. Who are you with?
Politico.
Well, I'm really impressed, Pinocchio, because you clearly understand politics and the way the fog of war works. Because yes, as it turns out, since I answered Peter's question, what was it, like 5 minutes ago, my answer is going to have to change, because the answer I gave, that it was me who was going to bomb Iran first, turns out that's not looking very good in the polls. Turns out it's looking like that's going to probably get me impeached. But see, this is a perfect example of how hard it is to find the right answers in the middle of the fog of war. Who knows, maybe I'll turn out to be as delirious as Marlon Brando at the end of Apocalypse Now. What do you think of that, Peter?
Well, I think that's exactly the horror that most of the world is afraid of right now.
You know what? I just have to say, Peter, you're a horrible person too. You're a horrible reporter too. You're as horrible of a reporter as Bill Maher is a comedian. Anyway, back to Pinocchio's very astute question.
That's political.
Whatever. Nobody cares. It should be Pinocchio because your huge nose does look like it's getting longer every second. But back to your very good question. Yes, in fact, my official narrative has changed since I answered Peter's question. My new official narrative for Operation Epstein Fantasy, Epic Fury, is that me and Netanyahu did a 10-second countdown and we launched the attacks at the very same moment. So now that I've cleared that up, I'm going to clear something else up. I'm going to unclassify now something that's been highly classified, and this is the real reason why the U.S. and Israel had to attack Iran. I'm going to declassify it for the world right now. The reason why we had to attack Iran when we did was because if we didn't, they were going to nuke and invade Greenland. That's right. That's why I've always said the United States has to have Greenland and Canada, because if we don't take them, Iran will. No further questions.
Mr. President, Mr. President,
Welcome to the big show. I'm Connie Bryan, and of course you're watching the one and only Connie Bryan Show, and boy do I have yet another big blockbuster broadcast in store for you tonight. You're not going to want to miss my emergency message to the president coming up right here live on the show, and it's also up on Substack, but I'm going to deliver it right here on the program. You definitely want to stick around for that. And also I've got a powerful segment that we're going to be doing talking about the corruption behind all of this collective bullshit with Epic Fury, which really is Epstein Fantasy. And I hope you enjoyed my impersonation of Donald Trump to lead off the show in the cold open. Now, we have a lot to get to, and I don't know if I'm going to get to all of it, but it really is so important, as you know, to me to welcome all of our viewers in our respective markets. So this is that part of the program where I want to do that. I want to welcome everyone who's tuning in across the nation. We've grown the show to over 20 markets nationwide, and I couldn't be more proud. So let's begin by welcoming all of you who are tuning in our hometown of Sacramento and our sister city right next door, Davis. Thank you for watching. And then starting at Truckee, Tahoe, and then we'll move over to the Bay Area. Welcome to everyone tuning in Lake Tahoe and Truckee. Also, welcome to all of you tuning in wine country in Napa Valley. And in the actual Bay Area, welcome to everyone tuning in Berkeley, California, as well as San Francisco and San Jose at Create TV. And in the southernmost part of California, we have a couple of markets. Welcome to all of you tuning in Long Beach, as well as Santa Cruz and Gilroy. I actually have viewer mail tonight coming up with a viewer from Santa Cruz, so stick around for that. And then moving out of California, we have a couple of markets in Oregon. Welcome to all of you tuning in at Open Signal in Portland and everyone watching in Beaverton, Oregon. Moving to the center of the country, welcome to all of our viewers in Denver, Colorado. And then over to the East Coast, starting at the southernmost point, welcome to everyone tuning in Salisbury, Maryland. and one of our longest standing markets, Salem, Massachusetts. Thank you for watching. And two of our newest markets in New York City. Welcome to everyone watching in Manhattan and Staten Island. Moving a little further northward, welcome to all of you tuning in Stratford, Connecticut at Soundview Media. And last but certainly not least, welcome to everyone watching in the Falls area of Vermont, which would be Bellows Keene Station in Bellows Falls. I don't think I left anyone out. Welcome to you wherever you are worldwide on the web. Thanks for tuning in to the Connie Bryan Show, where you know I bring you the truth to power content that you don't get in the mainstream media that they're trying to keep from you. And that's the reason why I've been so shadow banned, is because over the years I've refused to, be controlled and conform to that system of corruption that has a specific narrative you have to stick to in order to work for them. So like I always tell you, I need for you to be the wind beneath my wings, okay? You got to step it up, folks. I need you. I give you this free show. This is not like a podcast where people come in and just, they chit chat in front of a camera or a microphone. This has a lot of production value I have to put into it. I mean, there's so much goes into preparing and all the research that I do every month leading up to when I actually tape the show. And then there's like hours and hours of editing. You wouldn't believe how many hours was involved in the comedy sketch that I led off the show with the cold open of my impersonation of Trump. So many hours, so much work goes into this for a real television show. People just don't have any idea. The only reason that I'm only on cable access is as you can see, that the content I bring challenges those, calls out the corruption of those who are the Mockingbird media. If you watched my last episode, I told you about Project Mockingbird, which was exposed back in the 70s. And it came out from the Church hearings, the Senator Church investigation into the CIA, and it showed that the media was completely controlled by our U.S. intelligence and the CIA. It's only gotten exponentially worse since then. So the reason yours truly, don't think, oh, you're just on cable. The reason I'm here on cable access is because there's no way the corporate media is going to have someone like me, because I'm not going to be controlled by them. Okay, so reward that for me. Okay, be the wind beneath my wings, where you see the resistance I've run into for over 20 years now, bringing you this truth to power content. Over 20 years. Okay, I'm producing it for you out of my pocket, completely for free. I don't put a paywall up for this. And all I ask is, I'm asking you, go and find my content where I'm being shadow banned on YouTube and on Rumble, and share it, like it, share it. If you have a Facebook page, you can put it up there and share it. Help me get the word out that I'm bringing the truth to power out. And then support me with my books, which are the only thing that sponsors this show. My books, Wholly Liable, and my newest book that I just released, available wherever books are sold, Change. You're going to love that book. It's just like my show in book form, powerful chapters. A couple of them are very intimate, revealing some very intimate behind the scenes things, about me and my life, and also how the show came about, and how I received the huge endorsement from comedy legend Jonathan Winters. So those are the ways I could use your help. I could use a few more reviews for my books on Amazon, So please, you guys, you got to step it up, and you're part of this ministry of healing that I'm bringing, like I've been telling you. This isn't just about entertainment. This is about bringing healing, change, which is why I named the book Change, where it's needed most. We're going to get to viewer mail coming up. But first, I want to say, do you like my new Argon 60s era pill mic? In the old school tradition of Guess Who? Do you remember? One of my huge idols, one of my huge broadcasting talk show heroes, one of my earliest influences as far as talk show hosts go, would be, of course, David Letterman. Yes. And so he was known for having the Argon pill mic. So I'm so excited to now have that here as part of the show, hearkening back to his influences on my stylings. And of course, that means we're going to have to do a little bit of, along with viewer mail, a little bit of this right here, right? By the way, check out my impersonation of David Letterman. You're going to love that too. You can find it on YouTube and on Rumble. I did a really nice full-blown impersonation of David Letterman. But yes, now it's time for viewer mail. And I want to thank Joan from Santa Cruz for sending this in. It's a very, very special letter she sent me. So let me read it to you now. It says, "Hi, Connie. I thoroughly enjoyed your show last night." So she's talking about the last episode for March. She said, "I learned a lot." And she said, "I plan on getting your latest book very soon." So thank you, Joan. She said, "I always had a hunch that the mafia was involved in JFK's murder." So I talked a little bit about that. If you want to know a lot more about that, you can check out Whitney Webb's fantastic 2-volume book, One Nation Under Blackmail, where she gets really into the weeds, I guess you'd say, in depth into that issue of how the mafia partnered up with our U.S. intelligence services right after World War II. She describes that was kind of the inception point. So anyway, I talked a little bit in the last episode about how it's now been exposed that the CIA, working in partnership with the mafia, who were responsible for assassinating JFK. So Joan goes on. She says, "I'm concerned about our country's future. If there is one," she adds. There is one, and so I get into what we have to do, the specifics. I have the playbook for how we need to heal and correct the political system. I talk about both the spiritual healing element as well as what we're going to have to do to bring about, I guess, salvation, if you will, of our democracy. But she makes the comment, if there is a future, there's one way and only one way for us to save it, to have the future that we the people are supposed to have, guaranteed by our foremothers and forefathers in the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, which has been made a complete mockery of. It's been completely perverted by corporations. And there's only one way to do it, and I write about that, and I really want you to check that out also on Substack. I call it the Great American Compromise, and I'm probably going to get hard and heavy into that in a future episode. Haven't had a chance to get to it yet. I've been meaning to actually make that the topic of this month's show, but there's been so many things happening with this crazy, corrupt attack on Iran by Trump and Israel, by Trump and Netanyahu, that I just haven't been able to get to that particular content yet, but we are going to get to it. In the meantime, if you could check it out on Substack, I'd really appreciate it. The only way that we're going to be able to take our country back, and I call it the Great American Compromise. Joan continues, "We're living under a fascist regime now." She says, "I'm 88 years old and can see how things are getting worse by the minute." She says, "If I were younger, I would leave this country." She says, "My daughter and her husband are doing this, and others I know." She says, "I know that it's a cop-out, but it seems that short of revolution, there won't be much change in the government." Well, we can have a peaceful revolution, and that's why I'm telling you about my Substack about the Great American Compromise and my playbook for bringing the change that we need and bringing a peaceful revolution for we the people. Like I said in the last episode that she's talking about, that she liked, that she's responding to, I said, we have to go rogue. Matter of fact, I'm going to play a clip from that in just a second for you to see. A really good 3-minute succinct clip that I did, that I put together from the last episode, in which I said we have to go rogue from this corrupt system and stop letting them pull us into it and have us vote for their candidates. But she says, I know it's a cop-out. It seems short of revolution. There won't be much change in the government. This is why I applaud. She's very sweet, saying she applauds me for my bravery and perseverance in this struggle. Well, thank you, Joan. She says, I have a 64-year-old son who has been saying what you say in your ministry, that we need a matriarchy like ancient cultures. And after that, she kind of gets very pessimistic and says that, she doesn't think anything's going to change. But I just want to say, Joan, you have reason to be optimistic, because that's where healing does come from. It won't come from pessimism. It always comes from optimism. Healing comes to those who will receive it and who will create it. If we resist healing, that's why so many people don't find healing, is because they haven't been taught the way that healing comes into your life. You have to be open and wanting and optimistic and helpful in receiving it. You have to be willing to receive it. And those who put up the block of having weaponized faiths like Judeo-Christianity and Islam, which we'll talk more about here in a little bit, that's what puts up a block to healing. That is involved. A lot of the beliefs in those fraudulent weaponized faiths, those beliefs are blocking healing because they're not understanding who and what God is, and so they're not able to receive healing because they're looking at it completely wrong, thinking that others are condemned, thinking that they are the chosen ones and all this. That just completely puts a block up, and it stands in the way of bringing healing change. So that's a lot about what I talk about in both of my books, by the way. But I just want to say, as we wrap up the viewer mail here, Joan, you have every reason to be very optimistic that we can bring the change I talk about, because you hear it from your son. That means that you brought him up right. So great job there. He's saying the things I'm saying, so take heart. There's every reason to believe we can make these changes, and we can hold the Epstein class accountable, and take our country back.
Have you ever had a personal relationship with Donald Trump?
What do you mean by personal relationships?
Have you socialized with him?
Yes, sir.
Yes?
Yes, sir.
Have you ever socialized with Donald Trump in the presence of females under the age of 18?
Though I'd like to answer that question, at least today, I'm going to have to assert my 5th, 6th, and 14th Amendment rights, sir.
You're going up the escalator? I'm going to be dating her in 10 years. Can you believe it?
Ivanka, what's the favorite thing you have in common with your father?
Either real estate or golf.
Donald, with your daughter?
Well, I was going to say sex, but I can't relate that. Although she does have a very nice figure. I've said that if Ivanka weren't my daughter, perhaps I'd be dating her. I'll go backstage before a show. Yes. And everyone's getting dressed and ready and everything else. And, no men are anywhere. And I'm allowed to go in because I'm the owner of the pageant, and therefore I'm inspecting it. I'm inspecting. Right. I want to make sure that everything is good. You're there. Yeah, the dress. Is everyone okay? They're standing there with no clothes. Is everybody okay? And you see these incredible-looking women. And so I sort of get away with things like that.
Well, isn't that special? We're not the 50 states of America anymore. We're now the 5150 states of America. We're now the white nationalist, billionaire, pussy-grabbing 5150 states of America. And what is it that Republicans love to run around calling themselves? Oh yeah, the Christian Family Values Party. I think I have to call bullshit on that. Forgive me, Jesus, but it's the only word that applies here other than, I don't know, maybe hypocrite. Let me see if I have this straight. All you MAGA Republicans heard all the pro-Putin, immoral, corrupt, dishonest, racist, misogynist, xenophobic, sexist crap come coming out of Donald Trump's mouth on a daily basis the first time around. And all you moral Christians said to yourselves, you know, honey, I probably wouldn't buy a used Chevy from that man, but he's clearly one of us. So let's reelect him to the highest office of the land. The Christian Family Values Party. Let's see. Is grabbing women by the pussy anytime you feel like it, saying, I can grab them by the pussy because I'm a star? Is that a Christian family value? How about paying off multiple porn stars to hide sexual affairs from your wife and the rest of the country just to get elected president? Is that a Christian family value? How about sexualizing your own daughter? Saying, if Ivanka wasn't my daughter, I'd definitely be dating her. Or in another interview with Ivanka sitting right next to him, when asked the question, what's the biggest shared value you both have in common, what did we all hear Donald Trump say? Probably sex. Is that a Christian family value? Or how about separating little children from their immigrant families at the f***ing border? Forgive me, Jesus. Is that a Christian family value? The whole world heard and saw all these things coming out of Donald Trump's ass, and which party couldn't get to the polls fast enough to re-elect this orange con artist? If you said the Republican Christian Family Values Party, well, ding-a-ling-a-ling-a-ling-a-ling, we have a winner. More like the Jeffrey Epstein Values Party, if you ask me. Actually, no, right now the Republican values are even lower than Epstein's, but they do sound like someone else's values. Who could it be? I don't know. Could it be Satan's values? To just sum it up here, we have the wrong leaders in power. And we the people, okay, all of us who are not the Epstein class, the 99% of we the people, common folk, we have to replace the Epstein class as quickly as possible. We the people have to go rogue. We have to go rogue and stop letting this corporate monopoly, international organized crime Epstein class choose the two presidential candidates that they lie to us and tell us that we're electing. Because we're not. We have to end that. They're the ones that are picking them and fooling us into telling us that we voted for them and that we chose one. It's all predetermined by these a-holes. And Trump, whether it be Trump or Biden or Kamala, or whether it be Clinton, whether it would have been Hillary, they all are pre-selected because they're going to serve the interests of the Epstein class. That's what we have to end. We have to wake up and realize we have to end that once and for all. We have to end their sick, violent, war-prone, male-oriented, patriarchal, Judeo-Christian, Zionist-oriented leadership. It's motivated by bigoted, divisive, we are the chosen ones faiths. And we have to quickly replace that with more of a matriarchal, feminine system of leadership based on the much stronger healing, nurturing, compromising feminine strengths. Femininity is strength. It's the kind of strength the world needs, the nurturing, healing, compromising, coming together, motherly, loving, caring, strengths, uniting strengths, not warmongering, testosterone-driven, violent, whose dick is bigger than the other's strength. This has been the problem for way too long now that we have to replace. We need more healing, matriarchal leadership in world power. All right, so moving on. Like I said, I'm going to deliver my emergency message to the president live here on the show, but you can also find it on Substack. And it's entitled Emergency Message to the President, Karg Island Likely a Setup. So I begin my message to the president saying, you are making a grave mistake just considering sending ground troops into Iran in any fashion whatsoever. But this plan that has leaked out from your administration that you want to send ground troops in to seize Karg Island and its oil reserves is obviously one of the most potentially catastrophic ways you could ever choose to send ground troops in. If you had to pick the worst idea, that would be probably it. I'm concerned that you are deeply compromised by Israel in some way, causing you to have a major blind spot to the fact that Iran would not be clueless about Karg Island being a target. And such a known so-called weak spot would be the ideal setup to be lying in wait for such a mistake on your part. Common sense for Iran would result in their likely already having previously drained and safeguarded the oil already from those huge reserve containers on the island. But whether or not they've already done that, there's no way to know for sure, but wouldn't you think that Iran would already have said, we know what they're going to target Karg Island because it's historically known for having something like 90% of their oil reserves. So wouldn't you think that they would have already probably drained at least most of the oil out of there? But whether or not they have or they haven't, remember what one of Iran's top leaders boldly said in an interview right after you and Israel launched your war of choice surprise attacks on them. If I recall correctly, it was their foreign minister, might have been the ambassador from Iran to the US, but I think it was the foreign minister. He was asked in an interview right after the attacks about this very scenario. So I'm telling the president to remember this, regarding whether they were worried about the US and Israel sending in ground troops. So this was all over the news, this clip from Iran's foreign minister, I believe it was. And I said to Trump here in my emergency message to the president, I said, you seem to be forgetting what his cool, calculated response was to the question about whether he was worried that the US and Israel were going to send in ground troops. He said very calmly, we are waiting for them. So I say to the president in my emergency message, you need to take that response seriously and understand that if they are waiting for our troops, then certainly Karg Island would be one of the areas it would most stand to reason that they would have made powerful contingency plans as they wait for our troops to arrive and anticipate you, Trump, making such a grave mistake. I'm not, let's just call it a grave mistake. We could call it, many other things as well, but
Now, before I deliver, I say to Trump, I say, now before I deliver this second critical warning, let me preface it by saying that recently I happened to hear Colonel Larry Wilkerson, I believe it's Lieutenant Colonel Larry Wilkerson, alarmingly admitting in an interview recently that early on during the first Iraq War, he recalls that a decision that he knew that this had actually taken place when he was serving at the time. You aren't going to believe it, but I mean, you will now that you see how corrupt everything is. He alarmingly admitted in the interview that he was aware of a decision shamefully made behind the scenes at the highest level to place the Army's 82nd Airborne Division in a deadly vulnerable position in Kuwait at the time for the specific purpose of deliberately using them as a potential sacrifice to justify further escalation of the war. Yeah, I remember David Letterman would be going, now, there's no reason to believe that Colonel Wilkerson was not being honest when he revealed this, that in fact this was an actual strategic war tactic put into play in the past by those at the highest level in command and control of our military at the time. Therefore, Mr. President, I want you to take a moment to think about such consequences, because if you, keyword if you, or more likely Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, are thinking along any kind of similar lines of using our 82nd Airborne Division, who's been sent, it's now been reported, they've been sent to the Middle East with this leak coming out of the Trump administration that what they have in mind is using them to invade Karg Island. So if you have any idea of using our 82nd Airborne Division, or any other division for that matter, as guinea pigs in any kind of invasion of Karg Island, thinking that if there's a bloodbath, if they're massacred likely by Iran's powerful missiles that they haven't even yet begun to showcase yet, by the way, the mainstream media is not telling you about that. But if you listen to Lieutenant Colonel Larry Wilkerson and other experts, they're educating people in a fantastic way about the fact that Iran hasn't even begun to show what they're capable of with the interballistic powerful missiles that they have. Anyway, if you're thinking about putting our troops in harm's way where they could be hit by those powerful missiles that Iran hasn't even yet begun to showcase it, such a horrible massacre, you think that such a horrible massacre could be leveraged then in order to galvanize support from the American people for a much stronger, devastating escalation of the war? If that's what you're thinking, to say that you and or Netanyahu would be gravely and foolishly mistaken would be the gross understatement of the century. Because the result, if that happened, would be the opposite if our troops walk into such a trap and such a massacre. If by some chance you are not already going to be impeached for what you've already done against the will of the American people, with your own counterterrorism center chief Joe Kent resigning in protest just the other day, announcing, Joe Kent, okay, he's the director of the National Counterterrorism Center. Okay, And what we know about that center is all of the intel from all the other agencies, the CIA, the FBI, the NSA, all of it gets funneled through the National Counterterrorism Center, where Joe Kent was the director. So he would be somebody who absolutely knows the deal. And if anyone would know whether or not Iran posed any kind of threat, it would be Joe Kent. And he resigned recently in protest, announcing that there was no imminent threat from Iran. And now he's under all kinds of attack from Trump and his MAGA cult base because he told the truth. So I say to Trump in this message, you already had your own counterterrorism expert resign in protest because of what you've already done, saying that this has been a lie and that Israel forced the U.S., pressured the U.S. into this. And then I added, with already at least 13 service members killed, hundreds wounded, and well over 100 innocent Iranian elementary school girls and their teachers needlessly massacred by what have now been confirmed to be U.S. launched Tomahawk missiles. And not just, by the way, that wasn't just a single hit, single mistake, like an errant missile that just happened to hit that. This is another thing that you're not hearing enough of in the mainstream media. This was what's called a double tap. Okay, it was deliberately hit. That school, that elementary school for girls, was hit not once, but twice. And there's no way that they didn't have the intel. Okay, you could easily, if you're taking a look from satellites, you could easily see the children coming and going there at that building, at that location. So in closing of my emergency message to the president, I said, if your impeachment coming up after the midterms isn't already a certainty for those above reasons that I just listed, the righteous anger and accountability you will face from the vast majority of the American people, including many in your own MAGA base, regarding your decision to send our military men and women into what you had to have known could likely be a setup and a trap. Well, let's just say impeachment, conviction, and forced removal from office would most likely only be the initial starting point of what you're going to face. All right. So I'm hoping that that message got to the president, and it's possible that we're seeing a sign that he has changed his mind. I'm not saying that for sure he saw my emergency message yet. I did say in my Substack, in the subtitle, I said, "Can someone needs to help me get this message to the president?" There does appear to be signs that maybe he's changed his mind as of today, the day that I'm taping this morning, which would be the day after I wrote this and put it out there to his attention. A day later, he has decided to now give an ultimatum to Iran about they have to open up the Strait of Hormuz. He's threatening them, saying if you don't open it up in 48 hours, he's going to start bombing their power plants. And he's going to start with the largest of them. Well, that's a whole new thing he's come up with since it leaked out that he was planning on using our military troops and possibly the 82nd Airborne to go in, boots on the ground, into Karg Island, where they would be sitting ducks in the Persian Gulf, in the Strait of Hormuz, in order to try to control the Strait of Hormuz, which it's not going to work. They're going to be massacred more than likely. And so since I sent this emergency message out, a day later, we're now hearing Trump has come up with a new decision and now a new threat, which does not involve the troops at the moment. And he says that it's just going to involve bombing Iran's power plants one by one, which would devastate their communities that need that power. It's going to be an attack on the civilian infrastructure, which we don't want to see. So, like I say, this is a new announcement that he's made that leads me to believe that maybe he's changed his mind and starting to wake up to the mistake he was about to make of putting our troops in such a precarious situation. All right, now moving on to one other area that I want to spend a little time is just talking in general about this, like the corruption behind what they're calling Operation Epic Fury, that I like to call Operation Epstein Fantasy. I have another article on Substack that's entitled Weapons of Mass Distraction instead of Destruction Used in Trump's Gang-Style Drive-By Bombings of Iran. Now, because they're totally gang-style, like it's a drive-by that you hear about that gangs do. It's just they use their powerful bombers and stuff and fly by, I guess you'd say, and bomb the shit out of innocent people, and over, like I said, over 100, well over 100, it's like 170 people were killed in that elementary school bombing with our U.S. Tomahawks, with a double tap, just a drive-by bombing like that. And ultimately what this is, and why I call it Operation Epstein Fantasy, is it's just trying to distract from the Epstein files. That's one of the objectives of all of this. And it actually has caused, it's accomplished some of that. It's caused the whole issue of this war of choice to be the main thing taking up the news, and important stories about what's coming out in the Epstein files they're just not getting the airtime. And I wanted to tell you really quickly about one, and you can go check this out on your own, read it and more, find out about it more in depth. This is reporting by Bloomberg about Senator Ron Wyden from Oregon, who tried to get an unredacted file that was released in the Epstein files, and it was blocked by Todd Blanche, who is the number 2 at the Department of Justice. Wouldn't allow Senator Ron Wyden to receive something that the DEA was going to give him, showing the evidence that there are like 12 other co-conspirators identified by a special organized crime task force of the DEA. So this is huge. Remember, they were trying to tell us there's no other co-conspirators. Pam Bondi and Kash Patel were trying to tell us that it was just Epstein. He was trafficking the girls to himself. Of course, it doesn't make any sense at all. We know there's probably hundreds, if not more, of co-conspirators. Well, this is just another example where the DEA, there was a task force, and it's called the Organized Crime Drug Enforcement Task Force. And they identified Epstein and 12 others and 2 companies with a target profile. Okay? So that means that they were planning on putting together major criminal felony charges for sex trafficking and drug trafficking in a transnational organized crime effort. So what happened? The DEA was going to release the unredacted file showing all of that, who the 12 other people were, who the other 2 companies were. And just before the DEA could release it, because it was part of the Epstein files, who steps in to block its release? Todd Blanche, number 2 at the DOJ, who is also one of Trump's personal attorneys. And this, is just not being reported to you from the mainstream media. This is why you tune in to the Connie Bryan Show. Thankfully, there's some other content creators out there that are talking about this. That's how I found out about it. And let me just read to you just a brief 2 paragraphs from this great reporting by Jason Leopold, senior investigative journalist of Bloomberg News, dated March the 19th, just a few days ago of this year, 2026, entitled, this Bloomberg story entitled, Blanche accused of blocking release of unredacted Epstein file. And he says, Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche is blocking the Drug Enforcement Administration from releasing an unredacted document from the Jeffrey Epstein files about an investigation involving drug trafficking and money laundering. And by the way, it also includes sex trafficking. If you start looking into it more, you'll see the details. And this according to a letter that Democratic Senator Ron Wyden sent to Blanche on Tuesday. Document, a 69-page target profile prepared for the DEA by the Department of Justice's now defunct Organized Crime Drug Enforcement Task Force, was released in January along with millions of pages of other documents from the Epstein files. And it says, although heavily redacted, it showed that the DEA and the Organized Crime Task Force investigated Epstein and 12 other people and a couple of companies, and that's who's in this target profile. So check it out. It's in Bloomberg News. You can find it by typing in Bloomberg, Jason Leopold, and the Organized Crime Drug Enforcement Task Force. That should pull it up for you. But he mentions that the Organized Crime Drug Enforcement Task Force is now defunct. You know why? Guess who shut it down not long ago? Yeah. Should I give you the music to Jeopardy, maybe? No, you don't need any time at all to figure it out. Of course, it's Donald Trump. All right, that's going to have to do it because we're out of time. So thank you so much for tuning into the show. Don't forget to go to Substack and check out some of these articles for yourself and get more detail. Until next time, stay safe, and I'll talk to you then. Go ahead. Mary Bruce, ABC News. So after Secretary Rubio said Israel was going to attack Iran before us, you are now saying that you were going to attack Iran before Israel. Can you tell us, is that your final answer, or will you need to use a lifeline and maybe call a friend?
Are you trying to be a comedian or a journalist? Because either way, like Bill Maher, you're an epic failure at both. Who are you with?
ABC News.
Fake news. And, I just have to say, you're a disgusting person, okay? You're a horrible reporter, too. All right? I don't think I've ever seen you smile. I don't think I've ever seen you wear a short skirt and heels. Why don't you wear a miniskirt for me? I'll tell you what, I'll answer your stupid question if you'll do one thing for me. Take your tongue and wipe it around your lips and make them real wet like this. And call me Daddy Donald. But you won't do that, will you? Because you're a horrible excuse for a woman.